Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo with Andy Lipson, and we are here today going to do part 2 of our Q&A. So here we are, round 3
Right.
for our Q&A.
Do we want to start with my mom's quote?
Sure.
Yes, because she's going to ask me a tough question later on, so we might as well start with the nice part.
All right, so this one here, no?
Correct.
All right.
This was from my mom.
This is from Karen. Thank you, Karen Deutsch. Sorry.
Which is English, which is German for German.
Okay. Dear Andy and Eduardo, thank you for the opportunity to pose questions with respect to your excellent series of video blogs on various political topics. You are the political odd couple and ideologue committed to working for the worldwide destruction of the capitalist system.
That's me.
And a progressive liberal who is not quite comfortable with all this emphasis on breaking everyone's toys.
That's him.
Though I will address questions to you individually, I would welcome responses from either.
Thanks, Mom. That was very nice.
Thank you, Karen. And we will address your question.
Yes. All right, so the first question is I'll ask it, or I'll read it, and then you're going to answer first, and I'll give the second response. So this is from Saul, a friend of yours.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. You say you both aren't experts, but you both frequently say years of events or names or mention a latest event. How can we make better choices and listen with a careful filter to lots of information that exists? I get overwhelmed and I don't know where to start. I think most of us think politics are overwhelming because we are caught up with our lives and there is so much to keep up with. How do you stay informed? How long will you both keep up with this channel podcast?
So there are 2 questions, I suppose, there. So I will...
Yeah.
We repeat various times that we are not experts. But I think maybe to you it might feel that way because I think there is people overwhelmingly, especially in our time, get inundated with information coming from all sources, especially with social media that comes in and news feeds that you have all these articles showing up and people sharing memes, people sharing summarized things that happen in one picture and they quote something that happens at Washington DC or around the world and globally. And maybe we talk about something in depth. Really, I think that we are both interested in this stuff, so it comes a little easier to us. That's one, I think, because we are always reading. Even before this podcast, we did it because of so much that we read, and we're like, where do we channel this conversation? But I think it's first we're a little bit interested in this stuff that gives us the higher or a little bit more of an advance than other people. But if you want to develop it, I think that you should start with what you are able to passionately sort of get connected to, whether that to be immigration or that be racism or that be climate change or whatever, and see how I'm going to speak for myself, like you see how that fits with especially the topic that keeps coming up a lot. Well, it's part of who we are, the capitalism system. See if it fits in with that, question it, see why would you defend it, or see if you would stay protecting it as someone that is going to be part of the system. How do we stay informed? Reading, listening. I listen to a lot of things, I think more than read lately, because I have so many things I have to do and I'm busy. But I do read in the afternoons. I don't read as much as I used to, but I do read, and it's very slow, and I usually read over the weekends. But I listen every day to various sources. That is podcasts, audiobooks, even stuff on YouTube from other people that share similar content or opposing content to ours, but in the same sphere of the political game of audio programs. I think Andy had already shared in the Q&A what resources you can read. So if you're interested in socialism, I myself will read some of those. I have read a couple, but not all of the ones he had posted, Andy, and I think I will look those up, and I recommend for our listeners to go back to the previous episode and see some of the stuff that Andy had posted. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. So you can.
And you had said you might read Capital, right?
This year. I will there's several
3
books.
volumes set?
I'm just going to read one for this year first.
Right.
But I'm going to read Capital for this year because I do not label myself a socialist, but I think it is fair that I give it a fair assessment, which I have not. And I will admit, I have only read supplements to the Communist Manifesto, and I have not read the actual Communist Manifesto.
Yeah.
So supplements, I read very good supplements, which include a lot of the text, but I need to delve right into that, and that's a revelation I'm given because I think that is fair. I think I want people to feel connected to me, that I'm not like this expert as we are trying to emphasize here.
So my feeling about that, in terms
very quickly, and listen with careful filters. I think that's a good one for you, like filters. Okay. I didn't answer that one, but because it's hard, so much information.
I think I already have how I'm want to respond, but
okay, I already got it.
All right. I think I want to say that I understand the notion of feeling overwhelmed, but I think I'd actually point you to last week's episode where Hema talked about her experience of coming into political consciousness and getting involved. She started to read. All this was a result of what started to take place in events in Nicaragua. She was not involved. She was never thinking of being an activist, never thinking of being involved in the struggle. But the world and the events around her dictated that she had to. And I think that's the situation most people find themselves in. And the reason I think things seem overwhelming is because it's not because there's so much stuff coming at us. It's the fact that we as a class aren't doing anything. It's like this. If a car is coming at you and you're just standing still, it just runs you over. But if a car is coming at you and you're moving quickly with it, and you're moving as well, then it doesn't hit you as hard, and it seems more manageable to deal with this vehicle coming towards you. It's kind of a physics sort of thing if you think about it. And that's the situation I think we face with regards to the working class and our position within it. Is the working class is literally stationary. The ruling class is making moves all the time, and it just seems overwhelming. It seems like things are moving all around us. It seems like we have no way of managing it. So the reality is that very few of us have made the decision to commit our lives to figuring out how the world works, because there's nothing about the struggle that's forced us to do that. And there might have been some individual thing that led me to do it, and then led Hema to do it, or maybe led you to do it. But I think the biggest reason that people feel overwhelmed is not because the actual situation is just so overwhelming. It's the fact that the response of our class has been so underwhelming, and it doesn't give us a sense of purpose. It doesn't give us a sense of a way to engage and be involved in the struggle. Because the minute that happens, you're going to start reading. You're going to start trying to figure out why things are going on. I'm not saying we should wait. You should wait till then, but that's the answer I would give. Is that just understand that the reason it feels so overwhelming is because our side has been so still and has not engaged in the struggle. When our side does, you're going to be like, wait, why am I not part of this? And then when you're part of that, you're going to start to it's going to raise questions that are going to force you to read and find other resources, listen, podcasts, whatever. Until then, like you said, find what interests you and do it, and read about it. But I think the situation that we face today, I think that the situation Saul's talking about is one that most people feel. But the way that's going to change is by the struggle becoming engaged by our side. So that's my thoughts on that. And as it relates to how long are we going to do this?
I will, well, just to be transparent to you, I don't know if you're going to keep this, but I will keep up with this year, and I hope to continue. This is really, I feel, Andy's channel. And we share it for the moment, but the day that I feel that I would like to say that I would like to continue for a long time, but the day that I feel like it is something that I'm just overwhelmed with so many projects,
yeah,
it will be left up to Andy to know what he will do with it, which will be really sad if he does not continue, because he has now followers.
Well, I'll do this as long as Eduardo does it. No pressure. So,
I don't have any. I don't foresee any time to quit.
Yeah.
I see myself talking about this kind of stuff for a long time.
And when it kind of gets, if we start to feel like it's getting routine and stale, then I don't think, and we'll see. But
this is, we want to remind everyone, again, I think I remind myself this all the time because it helps me, but this is not a news channel.
Right.
This is not, this is for fun. Well, not for fun, but it is for fun, but not like, we do take seriously what we talk about. But like, what I'm trying to say is, we do this because we want to, and not because we're obligated to do it. And we have had these conversations prior to this camera in front of us, and we have these conversations, but we're hashing them out in front of you all now.
Right. So we'll see what happens.
And I don't think we would have stopped ever talking.
No. Yeah, we're just go on and on and on. Certainly I would.
Yes.
Right. All right. So you're going to read my mom's question.
Right, to Andy.
And I'm going to try to answer it.
Okay. Pay attention to this, because this is going to be a challenge.
Brutal.
To Andy. Capitalism has raised more of humanity out of poverty than any other system that we have tried. We live longer, eat better, have more decent housing, better medical care than in even so short a time as 100 years ago. And by we, I mean the world, Andy. North and South America, Europe, Asia, and even Africa, rife with famine and war. All have improved statistics in those parameters that make life bearable and even pleasant. The track record for socialism, not so good. This is Karen. The old Union of Soviet Socialists republics resulted in, she says, I quote, goofy economics, a factory that only produced shoes for the left foot, and ghastly human consequences. Stalin's terror, 3 million murdered kulaks in Ukraine. In our day, socialist Venezuela, we did an episode, you can see last week's episode.
My friend Maduro.
Is crashing and burning. When you proselytize for the establishment of a world socialist system, where are your examples of success? You are asking for people's minds, hearts, and hands. What future are you offering them, Andy?
Damn, you sound like you like that question. All right. So first off, let's not put some things out of the way right now. How much food, Eduardo, has capitalism produced?
A lot of food.
No, untrue. How many buildings has capitalism built?
There have been high bounties of food, but it's been allocated or...
Capitalism has not built any...
I see what your question
Capitalism has not built any buildings. Capitalism has not made any cars. Capitalists have not made any cars.
I see what you're asking.
Capitalists have not made any buildings. Capitalists have not planted or grown any food. Now, other than grown food, other than the grown food area where there are working class food farms, okay? Because there's also farmers and peasants who are not part of the working class. All these things that my mom is attributing to capitalism, I attribute, and no, it was not built by capitalists and was not made by capitalism. It was made by the working class. Everything we have today, the plumbing
I see what you're
system,
asking.
the electrical system, the fiber optic system, the computers, is made by one group. It's made by one collective international group, the working class. Now, the capitalism and the capitalists can lay claim to one thing, which is they are responsible through forcing peasants and farmers off their land by saying peasants could no longer control their lives. You're no longer going to be able to farm this area. You have to come into the cities and work collectively. The capitalists and capitalism can lay claim to one thing, that is constructing the system that built the working class. But after that, they didn't build shit. Capitalists don't make anything. Workers make stuff. Workers, everything you look at right now, this phone, the telecommunication system that's going to send this YouTube video to you, constructed by the working class. We call it dead labor. The reason that these things are called dead labor is they are made by workers who are either dead now or who are no longer part of that thing. Living labor is what is currently making the stuff that's being made right now. The Teslas that are being made right now, not by Elon Musk, workers. So capitalism has not made anything. It's the working class that's made it. It's just the riches of all those things, the profits of those things have been of the making of those things have been retained by the capitalist class, who deems ownership of that because they have a repressive state and that basically enforces their control over all those sorts of things. So, secondly, socialism. Well, let's first talk about, and here's I like it. People often talk about the body count, the socialist body count, the 3 million here, the 20 million here. Well, let's be clear about something, that while workers are responsible for the food being made, capitalism is responsible for the fact that anywhere from just under 10 million per year to as high as 34 million people a year starve to death in this system. Okay, that is, workers produce enough food, and mostly farmers and peasants, but there are collective farms where the working class is part of that as well. In fact, I think much food is produced collectively by the working class, as opposed to individual farmers making those things. That food is not distributed in any meaningfully smart way. That, I think, is that's a result of capitalism. And because of capitalism, we have on the order of anywhere from 10 million to 30 million people dying a year from starvation. And as it creates any medicines we created, up to 5 million people die a year from, what is it called, from diseases that are treatable. Not just diseases that are treatable. So that's per year. So let's just take 15 million per year. That means every year, the number of people who died in World War I, that's a capitalist adventure, World War I, that's how many people died in that. Every year, a World War I Holocaust happens in this system. If you do that in 3 years, you have World War II, the body count from World War II, 50 million, a capitalist war. Okay? So if you want to talk about a body count, socialism can't touch it. Socialism cannot touch capitalism. But that's not the issue.
Right. So
because it's not, I don't want to compare a big body count to a small body count. Let's be clear. And this is also in the case of Maduro and, of course, the Soviet Union. But every time even something that's not socialism rears its head, the capitalism, things don't just crash and burn. It's not like the Venezuela just kind of rose, and it's not socialist. But anybody who claims even socialism has not just been allowed to just do their thing and, oh, it's all good. See if the system works. The economy in Venezuela was crashed by the United States by boosting up the sale of oil through Saudi Arabia, by sanctions, all sorts of things. And then when we talk about Russia, what was Russia, when the Russian Revolution happened, what was the context of that? World War I, the 15 million people killed in a completely capitalist, imperialist adventure of who's going to lay claim to the resources of the globe. That's what that war was about. So what did the Russian people dare to do? They dared to have a revolution and dared to say, we're getting out of the war. Okay? Now, prior to them getting out of the war, Britain, United States, France, they were allies to Russia. Allies in this adventure of death that was called World War I. So why did they go after, immediately after the revolution, like literally immediately after the revolution, they go after the revolution and start to invade it, put weapons and try to arm the various people who are trying to take the revolution down, because they had a revolution there and they didn't want it to spread. And they were like, how dare you get out of this war? How dare you end the alliance of death that you signed onto with us and try to have peace? So the Russian Revolution didn't just like die of its own. It was strangled. In fact, Winston Churchill has a famous quote, which says, "This revolution has to be strangled in its crib." And they have done that. The capitalist class has done that every time. They don't let socialism or even revolutions just alone. Even Cuba, which I don't claim is socialist, it rung, sanctions up the yin, so many sanctions. What was it? Blockades that don't allow it to sell its goods. So they strangle these things.
And trying to interfere.
Yeah, and people die, people suffer. So there was actual working class democracy, and the biggest place that working class democracy was lost in Russia was people having to leave their workplaces and go onto the front lines to fight a civil war because they were being invaded by all these countries who previously had been allies because they were allies in fighting World War I. And then when you dared to get out of World War I because of your socialist revolution, which has no interest in fighting other workers, well, then the capitalists are coming after you. So none of this stuff happened. First of all, capitalism's got a massive body count, and frankly, capitalism's mostly or much responsible for the body count, even that we see among the socialists. Okay, the Vietnamese, what's his name, Diem Nguyen, the revolutionary Ho Chi Minh. Millions of people killed by the United States in North Vietnam, right, and also in South Vietnam, just to fight somebody who dared to try to unite the country under what ostensibly was a socialist government. Okay, and then of course when there's starvation and people have to fight for another system as a result of the destruction of their country, then they lay that at the doorstep of the socialists. So no, I reject that. And as regards to what was the last part you said about promising workers something?
What future are you offering them?
I'm not offering them anything. I'm offering them a choice. Workers have a choice. They can either die by doing nothing, and we will die, we will continue to die, or we can make the choice of fighting our enemy, which is the capitalist, and having another world. That kind of world will only be achieved if we can have working class democracy. Not because working class democracy is some nice kumbaya, but that is the only system, a working class democracy, not capitalist democracy, a working class democracy of Soviets, of workers' councils, is the only institution which will be capable of uniting enough workers to take out the capitalists once and for all. Because the fact is that if you are going to take down capitalism, you are going to have to contend with the fact that the capitalists aren't going to leave this system without making you pay for it in blood. They're the ones creating the body counts. They're the ones saying, if you try to take this from us, we will drench your revolution in blood. We will have to contend with that set of vampires, those barbarians that run this world. So you can't get around that. And what you will need for that is you will need a determined, mass, democratic working class, armed working class, that's capable of fighting for its own independent interests, that doesn't look to Democrats, doesn't look to Republicans, doesn't look to politicians, doesn't look to the state, but it looks to itself as determining its own future. So what I offer workers is that struggle to determine our own lives. And with the hope that we can have socialism, because if we don't, we get barbarism.
When you proselytize for the establishment of a world socialist system, where are your examples of success?
The Russian Revolution. It was successful, and it was strangled, and then it was defeated. But nothing today. Nothing. So congratulations, capitalism. You defeated workers who wanted to exit World War I, and you invaded them for trying to declare peace. The other thing they did was they basically they exposed all the various treaties that the Russian government had with Britain, France, even the United States, and embarrassed all those capitalists. It's one of the reasons they went after him as well. So they dared to get out of the war. They dared to actually expose the truth about the nature of the capitalist system and the way these people operate at the so-called United Nations, and they paid for it in blood.
If I may only add to something.
We said we wouldn't, but you may. Go ahead.
Capitalism has raised more of humanity out of poverty. I would add that it has raised who out of poverty, because currently we have poverty in capitalist nations, but there are those who benefit more than the majority who have been risen out of poverty. And housing, or even eating better, or better medical care, where there are plenty of countries under capitalist systems that are not doing welfare.
So,
well.
All right.
So, am I next?
Yeah.
So, are you going to read it?
Yep.
All right.
Question for Eduardo. And this is from Randy.
Okay.
All right, you ready? That's my partner. You have been doing What's Left with Andy for about half a year now.
Yeah.
In your opinion, has this led to any shifts or changes in your thoughts or political views? And if so, how? I like that question.
I think that Andy and I happen to be in the same section of a stadium, but he is in a different row. And maybe we are far from what rows we are in between us. And maybe I am, and then people who truly believe in capitalism are on another row or another section possibly. But I think we are in the same section of a stadium. And when I think of this word as shift, I think, yes, maybe I have shifted seats in that same section. But I have not, if you can all see, I have not switched to labeling myself a socialist. If everyone clearly has seen that. And so I cannot say that he has completely changed my mind. He has put me on the hot seat to question certain things like gun control, which to this day I'm struggling with. There are other issues that we do not struggle with. Even voting isn't as strong for me as the gun control issue, where I struggled and I felt uncomfortable, because what Andy is saying makes sense as far as all people having the access to a firearm if the government could potentially use that against you. But ethically, and as a practitioner of Vipassana or Buddhist, it's just a lineage of Buddhism I follow. Violence it's very challenging, the area of violence, for me to be able to just fully embrace. And I hope that there is another way. That is a hope, but that is living, I know, not in the reality of this situation that exists, where there is lots of violence, and if you do not protect yourself, they will come after you, like in Palestine. And people have to fight. And that is a struggle for me. Even having this conversation makes me feel anxious about it. I think that is the area where he has questioned me in a way that I have not wanted to delve into, where there are things I think we all think, that topics we all think about, but we just choose to I don't have to think too deeply about. And I think gun control was one of those issues where Andy put me on a hot seat and made me, in front of people, question where I stand on that. And for me, it is challenging to be in a position like that. Voting, there are things that he says that make sense, but there are things that are just like, once I see socialist revolution happen, I'm going to try to cover these holes in the system so that we don't have our wildlife refuge being mowed down or we don't have our water system being hijacked, which, it's already being hijacked, but just to keep some things at bay so some things can still survive until the revolution happens. Right? But for me, it's all about that. And And that for me is how he has shifted me in my stance, where he puts me in a hot seat and makes me think about things in public. And normally I sort of just like, oh, I'll just listen, but I won't have an opinion for you now. But I have to give an opinion because we're doing this together, and we are trying to expose ourselves so that other people can also feel connected to us and possibly have the same sort of inquiries in their head and delve into it deeper for themselves. For me, it is not comfortable, and I know that people, especially with being filmed and all, that people hold me accountable to it, and I'm alright with that. That's why I consented to this. Some things I have to think about over and mull over, and maybe, like I have said, I will come back to it. So as far as shifting and changing, when you put someone on the spot like that to think about something, yeah, there I have to think about things, and yeah, I have tried to angle myself on a different view of a position. I think I covered that. Yeah.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Do you feel like I feel like you've become more outspoken and more like taking positions on things. Would you say that's true?
I think I have always been outspoken, but to the positions that I am comfortable with. Does that make sense?
Okay.
With the positions that I have to start drawing a line for, I feel more comfortable being outspoken about that. That we have started to talk about in this series of episodes of What's Left. I feel very strongly about abortion. I've always been outspoken about women's rights, gender diversity and sexuality. That's not any brainer for me. Mm-hmm. And racism, right? But on anti-capitalism, when I'm not even a socialist, or gun control, or voting, or even positions on Democrats, and I feel a little bit like not everyone is evil. Mm-hmm. That does make me feel now a little bit more empowered to say some things, especially because I know that there are a group, like
it's a small group,
like a little,
it's a family.
like, you know, like a little, like
it's a family.
You can cut that off because people are going to
it's
twist
fine.
that.
Yeah.
But you know how like there are some indie films that no one watches, you know, because there's and then people follow it because no one. It's just a little alternative fact. Alternative fact. There you go.
Yeah.
Kellyanne.
We have like a passionate and dedicated audience.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a large audience.
We have people that listen and they want to know where do you stand on things, and that has given me confidence to be more, to draw the lines on certain positions. But before Andy, I had already some positions clearly marked for myself. Yeah, that I truly feel passionate about. But this has given me a bigger platform to be more like defined. Mm-hmm. Rob Page.
He's the guy who works for PG&E.
Yeah.
We might have him interviewed.
Hi, Rob. I'd like to know what you and Eduardo think 2019 holds for us. I'm seeing people organizing yellow vest protests here in the United States of the USA, the USA, for instance. Do you guys think that's going to go anywhere, or is it going to be co-opted and fizzle like Occupy did? Will Mueller actually get around to presenting his findings, or will we die of old age first? Will Congress find a spine and actually impeach Trump? I know it's both wings of the corporate party in a slap fight with each other, but sometimes a train wreck is fun to watch. I like that. What do you think will actually happen versus what you'd like to see happen?
I gotta go first, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in terms of predictions, I haven't done a very good job of late. I predicted the LA workers wouldn't go on strike. LA teachers wouldn't go on strike. I bet 2 burritos over it, and I lost. So I owe 2 burritos to 2 different people. I bet that Donald Trump was actually, between now and I think, was going to be impeached or go through an impeachment process. I actually thought that was going to happen, and I lost that bet. I just gave up on that bet because I don't think it's going to happen anymore, and I had to pay for somebody's movie. So I don't have a good track record. So I will say that I have to say that I don't really know. But some things that I do believe is that Oakland teachers are looking to strike in about a month, and I do believe they're going to go on strike. I believe that, and so that's a good thing. The French yellow vests, that struggle has gone longer than I anticipated. I thought it would fizzle out a little bit more by now, but it kind of has, but kind of hasn't, and it continues, and they have continued to be out in the streets, and they have continued to create headaches for Macron, and which I think is great. I don't think it can sustain itself, so I do think it's going to peter out, but it has already lasted longer than I anticipated. And I will just say that my overall prognosis is that the working class in the United States will, by and large, continue to be spectators to the political system which is attacking them. And the one area that I think I would really like to see is, I do think there's going to be another shutdown. I do think Trump is going to build his wall with emergency funds or something like that, and I think that there could be a general strike, but there won't. So I will continue to predict that workers are going to play largely a spectator role in relationship to the ongoing attacks that they will sustain in this country, and they are sustaining globally. And I think the other question that could be there is, will there be an economic crisis, another recession? All I say is there might be another recession. I think there will be another recession between now and 2020. I do believe that. And I think that the United States is in the best shape globally to survive that, because they've tamed their working class better than any ruling class across the globe, whether that be Russia, whether that be China, whether that be Germany, whether that be France. The U.S. ruling class, with this Trump Republican Party, Democrat Party game that they're playing on the working class, and getting us to think that one of those two parties is going to make something happen for us, whether it be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Donald Trump, that means that we are captured by our ruling class, and it means we've got us in a very good position to force us to make the sacrifices for the austerity we will need, or they will need us to feel, in order to recover profits in the next downturn. So I'm very pessimistic about our immediate prognosis. I think Trump's going to win in 2020. That's the other thing. I think he's going to be reelected. So let's see what happens there.
Yes, so I think 2019 we will be listening to a lot of candidates that will come forward. I think that for Donald Trump to be defeated, unfortunately, a woman cannot run. I am so sad to say, and that just makes me feel terrible. But the patriarchy is strong here, and I see the women that are running, and already their track records are not very good. Even I don't think that Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris are strong enough to be able to defeat Trump. And I think people want some, unfortunately, I feel people are not, they want a character. They don't want Donald Trump. They want a US American sweetheart like Tom Hanks or something that is recognizable. And that is why Arnold Schwarzenegger won for California governor. I think people will want something like that to defeat Donald Trump. There's something like that magnitude of a celebrity status, or something like that has to be able to defeat Donald Trump. I don't think politicians right now are very suspicious in the eyes of the working class. They're very feel distant to people, and people want like Bernie Sanders, but I don't think that Bernie Sanders will be able to win Donald Trump this time. That is just for the USA. As far as globally, I think that hopefully, but not hopefully not, but it's depressing to say that I think AMLO will continue to be as progressive as he is, and he will eventually get either blocked by politicians that are corrupt, or sadly assassinated, because he is still living in his own house and doing crazy things, a little old man. And it's too good to be true for us to have a politician like this in Mexico. I think that Venezuela will eventually be taken over by the USA. I'm sad to say, because Europe has gone in and jumped that boat. They want Venezuela as well. I think Germany will eventually turn on Angela Merkel. She's trying to transition to stepping down. I think Theresa May will not last for sure in the UK. She is not as high. Good polls show that she is not doing well, and they will possibly replace her with my hope is with Jeremy Corbyn or someone within the Labour Party. For France, Macron will not have a re-election for sure. I think Asia will continue to be powerful, but I think China will do some more of this Black Mirror stuff that is going on, like keeping credits now that they're tracking people for doing good deeds or bad deeds, and you have a score and you're not able to buy a train ticket or a flight because you haven't done enough volunteer work or something like that. I think there will be more of those real life dystopian things happening in China that we should watch it and look at as examples of what could potentially happen here in the USA, because it's very scary. And I think that is it for me. That's it for me. To answer, I think that Yellow Vest movement will, if possible, will continue, but I think that it will eventually, yes, fizzle out like the Occupy movement, because it's not leader. It's not no real goal. Nothing is they don't have a clear stand. And that it's always going to destroy something when you don't have an intention. I do not think Trump will be impeached. It takes a lot of work to impeach. And that is it for me.
That's a lot. I mean, interesting stuff, Eduardo. Interesting.
What about you? Why?
No, I thought that was good. I mean, I don't agree with some of that stuff, but that's good. That's good. That's good. No comment. No comment. That was good. I liked all the different predictions you made.
Okay.
So, next question.
This is for Andy. This is so hilarious. I know her. That's why I think this is hilarious. Caro. I don't understand how a socialist revolution can happen anymore without it being repressed.
You're not making fun of these people.
Torn down, divided, and basically destroyed with all the advanced technology that we have in our time and will continue to have. Andy, how do you believe any socialist revolution will take place with a government being able to repress one? You might have to lower my volume on the beginning for that one. For my laughter too.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, she's going to understand.
Because she talks like that.
Okay.
I know her.
That's fine. That's fine. Well, first off, there's no doubt that we have, not just in China, not just in, Middle East, we live in, I think, the most repressive capitalist state in the globe. So that's the first thing. We have more people in prison per capita, and I think numerically, than any other country on the globe. And our ruling class has not gotten on top by being nice to us or the people around the globe. And so, yes, Google, what is it? What's that phone? The iPhone X, which has face recognition that they're going to use against you, and Google using all our information and metadata collection, and the NSA. Absolutely, this is despicable. It's a problem. It shows that that their only way they can rule is by control. That they don't actually have our actual consent. They've been able to fool us into some things, but they are very, very worried that people are going to get off the leash. I hope we get more off the leash than they're worried about. But I don't actually agree that all this infrastructure of technology, of drones even, ultimately represents, it actually represents a two-sided sword. Because I believe that it's kind of related to that last question, which is all this stuff, all this infrastructure of all the telecommunications infrastructure, even the stuff to see things, all of this stuff is created and able to be controlled by the working class. The NSA doesn't operate on a separate infrastructure. They use Verizon and what is it, Mac? All these companies are essentially, they are running on an apparatus that's been built by the collective working class. And in a different situation where that same collective working class was organized and was conscious of what it needed to do, we could literally sweep the apparatus out from under them. The apparatus would still exist, but we would put it for our own use. And I want to give an example of that, and it's actually from the Russian Revolution. The first revolution that happened was in February of 1917. After the International Women's Day, women textile workers had gone out, Soviets formed around it, and the Tsar was taken down, and the first provisional government was formed.
What is the Tsar?
The Tsar is a king. And it was basically going from a feudal system to what was hoping to be a more open, pluralistic, parliamentary capitalist system. Well, that revolution was supposed to take them out of the war, and it didn't. And in that context, this new institution, the Soviets, emerged. So you had a parliamentary power that was supposed to actually deliver people what they wanted. That looked much more like we have today here, Congress and stuff like that. But that kept shoving people into war. It kept not actually reallocating land for the peasants, and it didn't have any way of providing food for people in the cities or in the countryside. And so people were getting increasingly embittered, and they felt like this new institution that had come into power, or not come into power, but was rising, workers' councils, not just in the cities, but peasant councils that were forming on the countryside, and councils that were forming within the military. That these institutions started to represent something that was like a separate power, what we call dual power. And people increasingly saw it as the thing that was going to actually need to run society. Well, the people in the provisional government, fearing this new power, actually started to side with the most fascistic, the most brutal factors they could find, in the hopes that it might smash those emerging Soviets. And there's a famous moment. It happened in August, about a month or two before the socialist revolution that takes place, where this guy Kerensky, Alexander Kerensky, he was the head of the provisional government. He's a socialist, but he was afraid of the real socialist revolution happening. He sided with this guy Kornilov, Kornilov, who was basically, just a brute. And Kornilov had every intention of coming into Petrograd, organizing a mass army, coming into Petrograd and smashing the hell out of it. And basically he totally could. He had a big enough army. He had Cossacks, the Black 100s, all sorts of people who had actually been, who did not see themselves as part of this Soviet system and things like that, that he was ready to bring in as a military force and kill everyone there and smash the Soviets and basically reinstitute not just the parliament, but he was going to hopefully reinstitute the feudal system, along with certain capitalist relations that he hoped to bring along. So what happens? Workers arm themselves, Petrograd mobilized, all that kind of stuff. But the biggest reason why the fight never even happened, this thing that was going to be a coup, why his giant military dissolved, is transportation workers through the railway workers, and the people who were sending messages through what was at that time the most modern way of sending messages through these various telecommunication lines. All these people were basically being controlled by the working class, so they were sending all sorts of weird messages that were confusing the military, confusing Kornilov as he organized his army. They were sending him with the train system. They were sending him into wrong places, so his army was constantly being disorganized and demobilized. And they secondarily sent people from the cities who were of the same race and the same culture as the people who that Kornilov was organizing, because again, they were counting on using racism again to smash them. Well, they got people who are of that same race to join into those groups and fraternize with this amassing army, and basically call to describe how much fake news was being essentially delivered in order for Kononov to do this. And literally the coup never, not just the coup never happened, a shot was never fired. We're talking about tens of thousands of people being marshaled for a military that got completely dissolved because the working class took control of the entire apparatus of the country. They dissolved it using the train lines. They dissolved it using control of telecommunications, what was telecommunications at the time. And we have that same power. We can do the same thing. We can do this, and we can do the same thing, and still even think about the military. That's our military filled with our working class members. You know, now there are some nightmare scenarios that I have of, like, they still have control of nuclear weapons, and can you get a few crazy people in a bunker pressing buttons to drop those things? That situation has existed since for the last 50 years. It's nothing new. But would the capitalists be willing to do it? Absolutely. I have no doubt about it. But let's be clear. This apparatus of control is also an apparatus of our potential control, because we're the ones who actually built it. We're the ones who actually use it and know how to use it collectively as a working class. So I actually think, far from this system, for all the things that have been built that are being used against us, we could just as easily use them against them and sweep them away. But we're not organized enough. We don't think that way. We have too many divisions. That's what stops us. So I think it can be done. I actually think the reverse of what you're saying, which is that all this technology, which is currently being used to repress us by the capitalists and make our lives miserable and used to control us, could be just as easily reversed and used against them, used to organize our side, and ultimately sweep the capitalists away from the stage of history and put ourselves back at the center of that stage, and use those things not to scrutinize each other and not to spy on each other, but to actually communicate with each other, to run a democracy together on a national and international scale. I think that's what that infrastructure, that's the promise of that infrastructure. It lays the promise of an international working class running its own world in its own interests, if we could take advantage of that.
Right. Thank you, Andy.
So, I got to ask you a question.
Yes.
Right. So this is from Brian, a friend of mine. And he goes, question for Eduardo. Marx saw the working class as the possible agent of revolutionary change in society. He said that the revolution to transform capitalism into socialism would be an act of the working class itself. You don't seem to agree with that. Do you see any role for the working class beyond voting? If not the working class, from what sector of society do you see change coming from? What will that change look like, and what sort of alternative society or system do you see it producing?
I'm sorry you got this impression, Brian. Maybe you have not watched enough.
Oh, he watches every episode. He listens to every episode. He doesn't watch, he listens to every episode.
All right. Well, I guess maybe my a serious question would be, maybe if you can point to something where I have said that another time, maybe when I see Brian in person, but that gave off this impression. I think that it will be the revolution. I will be the working class to be able to lead this revolution. Oh, maybe it is from having said that thinkers, or I see.
There's lots of different ways that I believe you have implied and said that you don't say the working class is the issue.
Well, then maybe you can help me to refresh me.
It's your question, man. I'm not going to help you. You can just deny it.
No, but you know, Brian, is what I'm trying to say, and that you might know. I don't know Brian like that.
Right.
And I don't know what he might be referring to.
I should shut up and let you try to answer the question.
Okay. I think that the working class will be part of the revolution. I think that thinkers, if maybe this is what Brian is referring to, when I have said in a video some time ago, I think that normally thinkers have led or sparked the flame of revolution. And that is from everything that I see. I mean, even Marx was an intellectual. It's just even the Mexican Revolution was led by an intellectual turned politician. There were many intellectuals in that circle. But even today, when we think about the working class, I think of all the labor workers, all the people in the union. I normally see people that are in leadership positions that tend to think about things deeply and have very well read and very well versed. I'm not saying they haven't college education. I'm saying that they have delved into something as deep to be able to sort of strategize, even in unions. The people who are clearly well versed in the contract are the ones leading the mobilizing workers in the union. I've seen this even in my own site where I worked. The people who are really versed in the contract, the people who are really after school working their butt off to try to be informed about everything that was going on and going to union meetings that most people were not. So I think the working class, the majority of the working class will just be doing what a good leader will tell them to do. That is maybe the impression that I have given off, because I do think that it's largely been led by people who delve into it without saying that people are ignorant or stupid. I'm not trying to say that either, but I think people are overwhelmed, surviving, trying to put food on the table and taking their children to have a very good education, that people don't have the time or the energy to delve into something as deep, and they do go out onto the streets like the fast food workers when they see it is affected by them. They are largely affected. So that is what I have said. Now, you also mentioned here the role of working class beyond voting. I do think that we should vote. I have said this. Yes, I have said this. I do not think that the working class is limited to voting. I think we must, I have said this even in the previous question earlier, I think that we have to cover some holes in our sinking ship until the socialists give us a ship to jump to.
You looking at me?
Yes.
Okay.
When you provide the ship, we'll jump over. But for now, I see the sea and I see the ship with holes.
So you put more holes in it by voting.
I don't see it.
Okay.
But I'm waiting for the socialist ship to come over, or some revolution ship to come over. So for now, there is voting, but there is beyond voting, there is organizing. And organizing to be able to come all the unions together and bring this momentum that we had discussed in last week's episode that I don't want to go into again. But there has to be all of us uniting at the same time to be able to make real demands and to be able to have the capitalist freak out. Yes?
And do you want to try that last part?
Yeah. What will the change look like? What sort of alternative society system do you see it producing? I don't know. It's not up to me. So I don't know why that question is placed on me. It's not up to me. I'm not leading anything. So I don't know. It has to be a collective to be able to decide this. What change will look like. I hope to contribute, but like Andy normally says, every time they ask him, what does a socialist society look like? He says, I don't know. So I think it's placed unfairly on me. I don't know what, it's not up to me, this alternative society. So we'll decide collectively.
I like it. Good. Brian's going to be upset with you or something. No, I shouldn't say that.
I don't mean. Like, what else am I supposed to say to that?
I like your answer. I do. I like your answer. So that's it for our questions.
All right. So,
Well,
Andy.
first off, thank you from questions round 1, and now this is question round 2. Thanks everyone for the questions. They were really good, really thoughtful. They definitely forced me to think.
Yes.
How about you?
Yes, I think that these are more engaging because they make us connected to the people who listen to us.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
It was a lot of fun for me to think about this stuff, for me to answer some of these things. Definitely puts us on the spot, or put me on the spot, and
Not a socialist question.
yeah. So and this is the kind of stuff that people, I feel like the questions that we got are the kinds of things that lots of people have. So we appreciate you putting those to us bluntly, and just giving us a chance to take a shot at them. And I guess the question is maybe next week what we're thinking about, right?
We're thinking, and I still have someone to interview.
Okay.
So you just, if you want to cover something else, I think Venezuela stuff is still going to come on, but there is other stuff that is happening as well.
I mean, actually,
I don't know if Venezuela is, well, we had already talked about it. But
well, one thing both Hema and Kenny had talked about was doing something about Latin America in general, right? We had talked about that. I think that Claire and another LA teacher striker are somebody I'd like to actually interview again in light of the Oakland teachers going on strike, and maybe talk directly to the Oakland teachers about lessons from the LA strike, that from them, from these LA teachers to the Oakland teachers who are about to go on strike. I think there's some very concrete things based on their experience. So I think that would be a good episode if we could pull something like that off, where the way I described it was like a love letter to Oakland teachers going on strike. Sort of a kind of a something with them in mind before they enter their struggle. Or something might happen, that might be the basis for next week's episode.
All right, yeah, something might will happen. You never know.
Yeah. So we'll find out next week. And either way, thank you, and we've got some things to tell people. Yes.
So just quickly, heads up for our listeners, old and new. You can find us on Stitcher, BitChute, Google Play, iTunes, and YouTube. And please rate, review, share, and that's it. Yeah, rate, review, share, comment.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Ciao. I have a suggestion.
Go ahead.
I have a suggestion that we have Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenge in the mainstream left. That, record me and put that on from now on as a pre-recorder so we can just add it. I don't have to say it every time.
That won't work because we're going to have different uniforms.
Okay.
You're the one who wanted to fucking go by this
we
whole
have
thing.
to. New listeners are like, who are these people? What's going on?
I agree. So each time, then you're going to have to say the same old boring ass shit.
Okay. All right.
I like it. I like it.
I've grown to it.
Okay.
Okay. We should ask your mother's question, the other one. Poor her. It's a simple answer.
All right, here, I'm gonna make it. She had two questions. She had one for me and one for Eduardo.
Poor Karen.
But it's not. Do I have to read the whole thing?
Last week we did 2 hours.
Do you think we should do it?
Just go.
Okay. All right. From here?
Yeah.
What's left? The Brett Kavanaugh hearings focused mostly on trying to answer an unanswerable question. Does it really matter if he gets confirmed? Andy, that's on you. You pushed it in that direction, so I was a tad disappointed. Additionally, in the course of your discussion of the unknowable, you both strongly implied that confirming Kavanaugh was a bad thing to do because, but you never really said because why. And of course, this is the really interesting and important question, at least for me. In your acquiescence to the conduct of some of the committee members, you seem to agree with the tenet that accusation is equivalent to conviction and there is no statute of limitations on the accusations of sexual harassment. Would you please discuss some of the reasons that you had for believing that Brett Kavanaugh should not be confirmed?
All right, so we have already addressed this. I've told Andy, we have already addressed this. And I will just say, I believe Dr. Blasey Ford, Christie?
Yeah.
Blasey Ford,
yeah.
Yes. I believe her. I believe Dr. Blasey-Ford, if you look at the hearings, it was not a very fair hearing. There was so much political will to try to block even for her to step into the hearing, for it to be fully investigated. And a week was not enough, or what was it, less than a week? I forgot now because it's been a while now. But it was not enough. We have already stated our position. I have stated my position. And I think that anything outside of that, if it's not satisfactory to you, then I'm sorry to say, but I have told Andy this over the phone. I think that you're looking for a specific answer, and we cannot give you that, because if you go to a restaurant, and it's the same thing, if you go to a restaurant and you ask for a dish that they do not serve, and the dish is not there, and you have to go to another restaurant. That's all I can say. And we do not serve that kind of dish here. So what else can I say? I'm sorry, but we just have a position, and this is it. So I think I think it's just unsatisfactory to you. Is it, maybe?
I think that's fine. You know, this is. Hi, Mom.
All right, that's it.